All right. Hello, lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of Storytime with an Angel's Life. Today, I have a very exciting book to discuss with you. It's called Cloning Freedom by Stephen B. Pearl. Book one in the Freedom Saga, set in the Switchboard universe. Book two, Freedom's Law, is contracted with Brain Lag Publishing to be released in December of 2021. And this is an interesting sci fi story. The blurb says in the early 21st century, Rowan is fighting a secret war against alien pirates bent on subjugating all of mankind. At least that's what she thinks. In reality, it's 1,000 years later. Earth has long been part of an interstellar and interspecies republic, and she is a character on Angel Black, an entertainment that allows viewers a complete sensory experience through her perspective. Who needs actors when you can clone famous performers and splice in some alien DNA? Since studio clones have no rights, their lives and experiences can be tailor made for the program. So that's the story. I do have permission from Stephen to do this reading, and this is part of the 2021 LitCon event, which is going on in March. I hope you guys check it out. I'll have a little bit more information at the end. So let's go ahead and get started with this excerpt. Ryan saw the ledge coming up and turned the wheel. Nothing happened. What the? He gasped. Ryan, that's a cliff. Rowan clutched the arm of the co-pilot's seat. I know that's a cliff. Ryan hit the brakes as the ATV careened forward. Ryan! Stardust, Stardust, Stardust! Half panicked, he scanned the control console for the switch he needed. He'd found it when the ATV launched itself over the cliff face. There was a silent moment that seemed to last forever. Then the ATV crashed, throwing him against his safety harness. A screech filled the cabin. Loose bundles of wire and fiber optic cable fell from the gutted consoles, and everything slid to the right. There was another crash and a sick whining sound. The smell of burning insulation filled the air. Then everything came to a stop. Stardust, are you okay? Ryan reached forward and tried to get a damage report from the computer. Almost everything was reading red. I thought you knew how to drive this thing! Rowan sounded shrill, even to herself. When did I ever say that? I was a Space Force's engineer. I only learned to drive these things well enough to move them in and out of my repair bay. Great. Just great. Can you fly this fabled ship of yours, or is that supposed to take care of itself? I have a pilot's rating, not a great one, but I'm checked out for the Starhawk. Ryan was returning heat with heat. Rowan looked at him. Sorry, I'm kind of scared. I know, Ryan smiled. What happened? That I have to find out. Ryan stood. Coming? Can you fix it? Rowan stood on the bedrock and broken gravel barren that surrounded the ATV. A ledge of rock over 3 meters high was about 50 meters behind them. Bits of the ATV formed a trail from the base of the ledge to its present location. Ryan lay under the front axle, muttering words she assumed represented profanity from several alien tongues. The vehicle was still blending with its surroundings. Oh, yeah, piece of cake. If I could get some industrial strength hydraulic hose, a new pump, and let us not forget hydraulic fluid, 2 electric motors with control circuits, not to mention tools, and at least 3 days, none of which we have. I shattered both rear motor casings. Why did I gut the proximity alarms? I'm sure you had good reason. What bugs me is I did. I needed the parts to restore the Starhawk's internal sensors. Well, you see what happened in the first place. The hydraulics split out. I'd gutted so many systems for parts, I must have disconnected the warning monitors. We lost steering and the brakes in one fell swoop. Oh, I. Oh. Rowan collapsed against the side of the ATV. Ryan crawled out from under the machine. Nova Blast! Racing to Rowan, he helped her to sit, then pulled his handheld from his pocket. The nanobots are breaking down faster than I expected. Kind of figured that. Am I dead? No, I won't allow that. No way, no how. Ryan picked her up and carried her into the ATV, heading toward her billet. Rowan shook her head. I want to see where we're going. Ryan nodded. Taking her to the bridge, he secured her in the navigator's chair. Settling in his own seat, he began throwing switches. What are you doing? Rowan painfully shifted position to watch him. I've killed the stealth. But they'll see us. Only if they look in the right place. Ryan pressed a button and a discordant hum went through the cabin. The angle on the screen shifted so the ground appeared to be sinking below them. Come on, come on. Ryan pushed forward on a lever and the ATV jerked ahead. What? Anti-grav and air turbines still work, at least well enough. Without stealth, I might have enough power to get us to Williamville. Will they see us? Suppose they see us. Ryan reached across and took her hand. Then they see us. We're in this together. May the divine be with us. I'll take all the help I can get. The ATV tilted dangerously to one side and the smell of smoke filled the air. Ryan adjusted a control and the craft leveled. Though if the divine had some Mark IV grav nullifiers, it could lend us. It would be a real help. Mildred had stripped to the waist and still sweat poured off her. The geothermic generating station was to her right. She used the evening light to inspect a short length of cable that dangled against the cold water supply track. Maybe not so dangerous after all. She reached into her pants pocket and pulled out her handheld. A minute later, the image of Colonel Birch appeared. Millie, so far our scans have turned up blank. Have you got something for me? The colonel seemed nervous. Maybe. Focus your scanners closer to the set region. I think our boy went to ground last night at geothermal generating station 62. I'm getting stupid in my old age. It's a ground pounder trick for when you need to recharge your heat dampening stores. He also stole power from the systems. Mildred crossed her fingers. As an officer, she knew she had to report it. As head of studio security, it could lose her military assistance. He stole... I see. Probably running on batteries. Not much of a threat. Bob, began Mildred. Not to worry, Millie. The studio is a major source of revenue for this planet. Not to mention the United Earth systems. I'll keep up the search. We can't have people stealing studio property. When would it end? This kind of thing could have us all up to our epaulets in fakies. Thanks, Bob. Mildred killed the line and inspected the ground. So where would I go? I've got full batteries for now. Mildred stroked her chin as she strode to the live stream track. There was a depression beside the track with a puddle of sticky goop on the rock. Interesting. Pulling a plastic vial from her pants pocket, she scooped up some of the goop. Bet I know what this is. She grinned as she returned to her vehicle. For that matter, where did I get a 5T light troop carrier in the first place? One that leaks hydraulic fluid. Stepping into the vehicle was like diving into a cold lake, and she paused to enjoy the goosebumps rising on her skin. Muriel, place a call to Michael Strongbow. Mildred was doing up the buttons on her shirt when the studio head's face appeared on screen. Mildred, what can I do for you? Mildred looked at her handsome, charming boss and didn't trust him as far as she could have thrown a planet. Michael, are you still a member of that Tech Restorer Society? Why, yes, I am. My old tank is nearly fully operational. She's the only one I actually served on during the fascinating. I need your help with something. What? It's about the Rowan situation. I think I may have a lead. Rowan's breath was ragged. Ryan's gaze kept shifting from her to his gauges and back. I'm not going to make it, am I? Rowan could feel her pulse racing. Pulling his handheld from his pocket, Ryan hit a key with one hand as he held the steering wheel with the other. Rowan's pulse slowed. What did you do? Rowan took a deep breath. I released the oxygenated artificial blood in your control pack. It should buy us some time. Ryan glanced at his power gauge, then at his main screen. Beneath them were line upon line of orchards, pierced by a long, straight road. He dropped his altitude to centimeters off the road. The lights in the cabin were dim, and the screen so dull he could barely see where he was going. The power gauge flashed at 1%, then the console went blank. Everything jolted, and there was a grating sound. Ryan threw a switch. A hum ran through the cabin, and the main screen lit up. At least that front engine's good for something. What? Rowan looked at him quizzically. Regenerative braking. It's giving me enough to see. Speaking of brakes, Rowan gestured to the screen. They were drifting towards the edge of the road. I got none. I told you the hydraulics are dead. Only the regenerative is working. Stardust! Rowan gripped the arm of her chair as the ATV skidded into a tree. There was a jolt that threw them back onto the road where they dragged to the left until they stopped. The lights went out. What now? Asked Rowan. The flashlight beam split the blackness. Rowan found herself hauled up on Ryan piggyback. A moment later, the flashlight's beam highlighted a handle on the troop section's exit hatch. Ryan's hand grabbed the handle, the door opened, and evening light flooded the ATV. Ryan leapt onto the road and took off at a jog. It's only a kilometer or so to Williamville. We'll make it, you'll see. Rowan held on for all she was worth. Her guts were sore from bouncing up and down from Ryan's jog. She couldn't fault him for the ground he covered. The road came out from between neatly planted rows of orange trees into the midst of a collection of small, identical huts, was really the only world she could think of. Each was made of native stone, mortared in place, and was about 9 meters cubed, with a peaked roof of black tiles. Several people watched her and Ryan pass. They all wore an orange coverall with a pattern of chain links embroidered over the breast pocket. In what could generously be called the town's center was a large stone building, nearly 30 meters long by 10 deep and 3 stories tall, with a peaked black roof. Ryan slammed through the glass and steel doors at the building's front into a reception room. Panting, he staggered to the main desk. A small woman with short dark hair, wearing green coveralls with embroidered chain links, sat behind a computer screen. Can I help you? She asked. I need to see the doctor. It's an emergency. Ryan leaned against the desk, still carrying Rowan. I can call for an ambulance, sir. The hospital in Ball Tower is much better equipped than our infirmary. No, I have to see Kadar. Tell him it's Ryan from the Starhawk. Tell him Wesnaki. The woman at the desk stared at Ryan, then pressed a button on the console built into her counter and spoke softly into a microphone. A moment later, her eyes widened and she nodded. Dr. Kadar will be here as quickly as he can. I'm to escort you to the infirmary. Rowan's head lolled as Ryan carried her. She was vaguely aware of passing a cafeteria and a little further on a kitchen. She felt Ryan lay her on an examination table. Then a retaining field came down and held her in place. She heard a door closing. White lights glared into her eyes. I know you hate this, but you'll need less oxygen, said Ryan. Then everything went black. Ryan opened and closed the cupboards that lined the infirmary's walls until he found the portable oxygen rig. Attaching a mask, he started the feed and put it on Rowan's sleeping form. The infirmary was a large room with 5 narrow beds in addition to the examination table. A diagnostic monitor occupied the wall above Rowan's head, and everything was antiseptically white. Ryan, I didn't believe it until I saw you. The voice was little more than a whisper. Ryan jerked around. A wizened, dark-skinned man dressed in a green coverall that hung off of him like a sack stood in the doorway. Kadar, what happened? Ryan moved to help support the man. The allowable treatments have proved less than effective. Why have you come, old friend? I need your help. My friend, has been poisoned. Kadar pulled away from Ryan's support hand and shuffled to the examination table. He looked at Rowan, then froze. Please tell me you didn't do this. Tell me she's one of those youngsters who got themselves altered to look like the character. I didn't think they permitted entertainments here. Kadar sighed and looked towards the ceiling. I'm in prison, not under a rock. We aren't allowed entertainments, but they do let us have magazines. By the divine, man, do you know how much trouble you could get into, have gotten into? I need you to help her. Ryan moved to the side of the examination table and took Rowan's hand. I can't be a party to this. This prison may not be a country club, but there are places that are far worse. Kadar, please. The wizened man turned away. No, I'll not report you, but aiding you, it's out of the. Do you remember Wisnake? Henry and I disobeyed a direct order to get you out. I haven't forgotten. Neither have I. I still remember what it was like to have a thalenozoid particle beam explode my eye. I still remember how much it hurt as you regrew it. I still remember bludgeoning that guard to death, all because you shut up. The shout was little more than a regular voice and left Kadar doubled over. He slowly straightened, taking deep breaths. All right, I'll help you. What can they do in the time that I've got left? What do you need? First, Rowan treated. Second, the ATV I was driving is smashed up about a kilometer out of town. Can you get it camouflaged somehow? Moving to the monitor board, Kadar activated it. An ATV. Is it inside the perimeter zone? It's in the orchards. The screen displayed Rowan's vital signs, blood gases, and cell counts, as well as starting a scan for infectious agents. Do you know what's wrong with her? The doctor examined the readouts, his face a mask of concern. She was dosed with Vitrion leech venom. Nanobots have tied it up. They're degrading, releasing the toxin back into her system. Ryan stared at the readouts. He knew just enough to know that it wasn't good. Marcus, quick reference, Vitrion leech venom, effects on human biology. Lines of text appeared on the screen, sitting above a desk in the room's corner. This computer is incredible. Far more than I need. The studio donated it to the correctional department when they upgraded. Never understood why they picked the name, though. Kadar moved to the screen and read, Can you help her? Ryan fidgeted, shifting his gaze from Rowan's readings to her beautiful pale face. Let me read. Go out to Sarah at the front desk. Tell her I vouched for you. She'll be able to help arrange for some people to hide your vehicle. Kadar became absorbed in his reading as Ryan left the room. Minutes later, Ryan was back holding Rowan's hand. Kadar looked up from his screen. Stardust. This toxin is a thing of nightmare. Neurological and hemoclassic. I'm sorry, Ryan. I'd need a selective blood dialyzer. Your only hope is to get her to a proper hospital. I can't do that. The show's producer's trying to kill her. My boy, she's already as good as dead. I cannot remove the toxin here, but when the nanobots holding it degrade, she'll die. You have to try something, please? Kadar stared at Ryan in mute compassion. If we had control of the nanobots, there might be something. Ryan pulled his handheld from his pocket. We do. I have the nanobots' control codes. Only I can't adjust their program enough to get them out of her. How did you get the control sequence? My handhold is the deluxe unit. It has a decode function. Kadar nodded. Really? Understand, this is a long shot, and much could go wrong. Fine, what do we do? First, order all the nanobots carrying the venom to congregate in her left hand. They won't all go. There's an inbuilt concentration limit to prevent the amputation option. Kadar moved to Rowan's right side and hung a bag of artificial blood. I do not intend to lop off her hand, so do it. Ryan pressed a button that brought a diagram of Rowan's circulatory system up on his screen. He entered the code to control the nanobots dealing with the poison, then tapped a go-to command and the left hand. That's the best I can do. It's maybe 20% of them. It will do. Now, I go back to the earliest days of my profession. Kadar placed a collection tray beneath Rowan's wrist. In ancient times, they believed the blood of a slave was impure and that by letting it, they could heal. Your lady here needs to be rid of the impurities. With expert ease, he placed a tourniquet around her upper arm, then slit the vein in her wrist. What are you doing? Order the nanobots into the blood, then let them purge. Be patient. This is only round one. Ryan pressed a button on his controller and watched as the tray filled with blood. Kadar placed a pressure dressing against the wound and took the tray to his desk. Now, order these nanobots to release the toxin. Go into passive maintenance mode. We should do it in another room so the signal doesn't reach the one still in Rowan. Be quick about it and bring the tray back here immediately. Ryan took the tray and his controller out of the room. When he returned, Kadar had a beaker and a syringe sitting on his desk. Now what? Ryan placed the tray of blood on the table. The nanobot's specific gravity is nearly double that of the venom. Thus, centrifugal forces should separate them. Kadar poured the blood into the speaker and put a stopper in its top. Where's the centrifuge? This volume of fluid? Kadar rummaged in his desk drawer, producing a ball of twine and a long, thin bag made to carry portable oxygen cylinders. Put the bottle in this bag, tie the cord to it, go outside, and swing it. Once it forms strata, pour off the top half. Bring me the rest. Ryan rubbed his arms while Kadar injected the separated fluid into the flow of artificial blood going into Rowan. This was the 7th time he'd watched this show. I'm pleased to hear someone managed to salvage Henry. He may be a polymer pervert, but he was a loyal friend. Keep it under your hat. I don't need any more trouble than I'm already in. Kadar laughed. It was an unhealthy wheezing sound. You couldn't be in more trouble than you're already in. The nanobots are in place. Activate their seek and capture program. Ryan pressed a button on his handheld. He noticed that the infirmary's window was brightening with the coming dawn. How's she doing? Kadar looked at the bio readings. Much better, although I don't like using this much artificial blood. It puts a strain on the liver. Still, her oxygenation's good. What does your handheld have to say about her little helpers? Between those that wore out and the ones damaged by the spinning, only about half the venom grabbers are working. Only about 10% of them have locked onto venom. Excellent. I think it's safe to let the remaining nanobots keep the concentration down until you can have her treated properly. Should I wake her up? Ryan smiled at Rowan. Just a tick. Kadar pulled the dressing off Rowan's wrist and glued the incision closed before applying a layer of artificial skin to finish the job. Ryan pressed a button. The studio nanobots and Rowan went to work collecting the sedative from her body and returning it to her control pack. A long minute passed before her eyes fluttered open. She looked up into Ryan's exhausted but smiling face. She smiled back and said, You look awful. You're not exactly ready for a photo shoot yourself. On impulse, he kissed her forehead. Ryan, I'd prescribe sleep for you, said Kadar. Can't. We got to keep moving. Hogwash. She can't be moved for at least a few hours. Stretch out on one of the beds. I promise not to let you oversleep. Ryan made to object. An enormous yawn stopped him. Couple of hours. Are you sure the ATV's hidden? My boy, half the convicts in this place were ground pounders. We'll be lucky if it hasn't been recommissioned and flown into battle. Now, go to sleep. Ryan nodded and collapsed on the closest of the beds. All right, so that's the sample read for Cloning Freedom. Sounds like a fun and interesting story, and I'm certainly looking forward to reading the rest of it, and I will have the review up on my website shortly, and we'll be sure to do a video review, let you know what I think. Just so you know, anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more about Stephen B. Pearl, like I said, he's going to be at the LitCon 2021 events from March 5th through March 7th. These readings are just samples of some of the amazing work that is going to be able to be seen at the convention. If you want to learn a little bit more about Stephen Pearl at the convention, you can see him on a bunch of really great panels. He's going to be a part of the Weapons and Armor panel, Pity You Can't Do Anything With It panel, Urban Fantasy and Sociological Times panel, Developing Believable Aliens panel, and Mind Over Matter panel. He also is going to have, I believe, this cover in the Cover Wars. So you'll want to check that out. And then I'm sure that he'll also be participating in some blog hops and other events. So be sure to come out and join us. I'm going to have the links down below. Also, if you want to learn more about Stephen and this book, I will also have those links down below so that you can check that out. Go ahead and pick up a copy if it sounds interesting to you. And I'd love to have a discussion with you about it when we're done reading. Until next time, keep reading.